Charlie. I'm one of the editors at ONI Press. The spotlight on a Cullen Bunn panel. It was the gentleman on the far side of the stage over there.
Hi, everyone.
I'm a little disappointed we don't have a spotlight.
We should have like a giant beam.
We should. It would
Well, there
reflect
is
off
one
my head.
bouncing off of his head.
Yeah.
Wait, take your hat off, Brian.
So this is gonna be. So we're doing this a little bit more free-form. This isn't gonna be the thing where I'm gonna go through his Wikipedia and ask him about his history. We're gonna focus on Cullen's creator-owned books, including The Sixth Gun, some unannounced titles that are being worked on in the future, and Helheim. Maybe talk about The Damned a little bit.
Yeah.
So if
I like
you guys,
that book.
if you guys could introduce yourselves down the line, we'll come back to you.
I'll start. I'm Brian Hurtt. I'm the artist and co-creator of The Sixth Gun and The Damned,
And life partner.
and life partner of Cullen Bunn. Hi, Cindy. Yeah.
She's saying, I knew it.
I'm Joelle Jones. I'm the artist on Helheim.
I'm Brian Churilla. I'm artist on Six Gun, Sons of the Gun, and something else.
And
Which I can't
unannounced.
And the
Unannounced.
well-received Secret History of D.B. Cooper.
I did that too.
Yes. Where's that at?
What?
Where are the books at?
Oh, hang on.
We should be holding books up.
We need
Secret
props.
History of D.B. Cooper.
We need the camera to zoom in.
This is gonna be very awkward as everyone holds these books up. Like a car
We'll sit
commercial?
on our laps.
No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. So Cullen,
Oh, and I'm Cullen Bunn. I write for ONI. I write The Sixth Gun, which is the ongoing series I do for ONI. I also write Helheim, and I wrote a book called The Damned.
And you also write for money.
And I also write for money.
The Tooth.
Yeah, I wrote The Tooth for ONI Press, and then I do some books for Marvel as well. I do Venom and Fearless Defenders, and the Deadpool Trilogy for Marvel.
So I'm gonna start with I think what was your first book in comics, The Damned, right?
Yes.
So that was the first collaboration between you and Brian. How did you guys link up in the first place? Because I know Brian was already doing comics as an
It's
artist.
Match.com.
Yes. This was pre-internet, actually. I think
We
it's
worked
been a
in a-
long time.
Yeah, we worked in a comic book shop together.
Yeah,
It's a classic story. Boy meets boy in a comic book store. Yeah, technically, I don't think we actually worked in the same store. We worked for a chain, but we were both managers, and we knew each other from the meetings, and we'd on the phone with each other all the time. And obviously, it turned out Cullen was a writer, and I was an artist, and 2 + 2.
Yeah, Brian was always drawing, and we started talking about doing stories together. And I lived in a really crummy neighborhood, and sometimes Brian would come over, and we would talk about this horror story we wanted to tell. And
We ended up telling ghost stories.
we tell ghost stories till all hours
True
of the
ghost
night. stories. True ghost stories usually. And Brian always made me watch him walk out to the car. He
Is there a
stuff I would
blanket
keep the
fort
door open and
involved?
watch.
No, but he had no street lights, and my car had no interior lights. So it was scary to go out to my car and get my car and drive away at night. So he would have to, because I wasn't scared of anybody in the neighborhood. I was scared of ghosts.
Yeah, it
I
was
thought a
ghosts.
ghost was going to be in my car.
No,
Like
it
you guys
was
were scared of Omar from The Wire.
No, we definitely
it was
got
ghost.
scared of. We
When he
scared
says a
ourselves
bad
talking about
neighborhood,
ghosts.
he means it was haunted.
It was a really haunted
The
neighborhood.
neighborhood was haunted,
Um,
and his house was spooky.
It was. But, yeah, and then, several years passed. Brian actually started working with ONI on some other projects, and we knew we wanted to do something together, but time passed before,
Well, we
before
put
that
together.
actually happened.
We put together
We
a
put a-
brilliant pitch.
We put together a great pitch for a book that ONI rejected. Boo, hiss.
Yeah,
How dare they?
And then, again, more years passed, and then
you put together another
I put
brilliant
together
pitch
another brilliant
with
pitch.
an unknown artist called
With a-
Chris Somney.
With an unknown artist. An artist named Chris Somney, who no one knew at the time. And ONI stole that artist away from me.
and rejected your pitch.
And rejected my
Capote in
pitch.
Kansas, Queen and Country.
And then Brian finally came back and said, let's try to pitch something else to ONI. And we pitched a book called The Damned. And I've said it many times, I'm very lucky that I met Brian when I did working at the comic shop, because I think it's very difficult for a writer to break into comics anyway. And I think even more difficult than finding a publisher is finding a talented artist to work with on something. So I got really lucky that Brian already had a connection with ONI, and that we knew each other from many years ago, and we did that book together, and that's really what got my start.
Are any of you guys out there familiar with The Damned? Anyone read it? Anyone?
If you haven't, you're in for a treat.
It's amazing.
Has anybody out there read The Sixth Gun? Then you'll like The Damned, I promise.
The short pitch for The Damned is that it's Prohibition era gangsters in a world where the mob is run by demons who trade souls. So
We call it monster noir.
Yeah, monster noir.
It's got it's a little bit Universal monsters meets Maltese Falcon sort of a thing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, and we're going to return to it as well. We got more plans to do more Damned.
Cool. So after The Damned,
I just want to interject and say,
I wasn't
when-
really scared of ghosts.
I was really scared of ghosts. No, I read Cullen's prose, and I liked it, and I liked Cullen. He's a good friend, and I wanted to work with Cullen because he was a good friend. I knew he could write. I was honestly surprised when I got the first issue of The Damned, like how good it was. Like I was expecting it to be good, but I was really impressed with how accomplished he. A lot of writers don't understand the comic form necessarily, and it is different than writing prose. It's different than writing for television or something like that. And Cullen nailed it in his first script out the gate, and I was super excited. And obviously, we've pretty much worked with each other ever since then.
did you have a process that you had to go through to learn how to write for comics, or was it pretty natural from the start?
I'm pretty much a natural. I'm naturally gifted.
Shifting from prose to writing for
know,
comics is two different things.
It took a little bit. Brian actually gave me some scripts that Greg Rucka had done for Queen and Country.
Yeah.
And I just took those scripts, and I think even now to this day, my scripts have changed over the years, but format-wise, but they're still heavily influenced by those original Greg Rucka scripts that I read in terms of how he conveyed story elements and what how much information he put on the page.
Yeah, I mean, I just as an editor, I think your style of it is my preferred format. I mean, it's just very clean and very
Is that because I'm in the big boy chair?
No, I know it's it's because you're cute.
Yeah, no, I think that's really what helped. Is I took that script, and The Damned wasn't the first comic script I'd written. I'd written a couple of other things, but they were all based on that Greg Rucka style script. And I think it's just getting used to that style and reading a lot. I read a lot of comics, and I looked at a lot of comics to try to figure out what worked. My favorite books, what works on a page. How there's sort of an economy of language that you have to get nailed down that you don't have in prose. In prose you can just go as long as you want to on anything, but with comics you have to kind of get that pacing down and figure out how much you can get across on the page right then.
Did your process change all that much when you went from The Damned to The Sixth Gun? You guys have collaborated at this point years. I mean, 7, 8 years at this point?
Yeah, it's been
doing comics. I mean,
Well, actual comic work, probably about 5 years of actual work, don't you think?
The Damned's been out for a while.
Yeah, but there was a break in between.
There was a break. Yeah, so about 5 years.
Solid.
I don't know that I really shortcut anything, or I don't really have a shorthand for Brian. I write my scripts the same way.
I don't want one.
Yeah, I try to write my scripts the same way for everybody. So I don't want to ever get in the habit of writing shorthand for Brian and then writing something for Joelle or Churilla. I don't want to accidentally fall into that Brian shorthand, or working in something with Marvel books. Which in some cases I don't always even have the luxury, not even of meeting them face to face, but ever even talking to some of the artists. There are artists I've never even spoken with that do the Marvel work. So I try to write my scripts the same way all the time, so that I don't ever get out of the habit.
So you're still, it's ostensibly, it sounds like The Damned and The Sixth Gun are kind of still kind of the same process for you a little bit.
Yeah, it's very similar. My script formats have changed a little bit. And my process changes from issue to issue. I try to figure out, do I write dialogue first? Do I write the plot, the action elements first? It changes every time I go to an issue. I'm still trying to figure out that magic formula that makes it super easy.
Well, I think artists do the same thing.
Yeah.
How long is the gestation period for The Sixth Gun? Because I know by the time that book launched, that'd been around for a while and gone through different forms, which everyone will see in the hardcover, which has all this bonus material.
Well, it was a pretty long time, because The Sixth Gun, when I originally pitched it, was a very different book than what is currently being published. It was going to be definitely a 6-issue miniseries. It was going to be a very dark, horrific story. It was not going to be a fantasy story like it is now. It was a 6-issue horror story.
We have lag time on the Damned conversation. This
Yeah,
is the
so-
actual. This is the visual aid for that conversation 5 minutes ago.
And even to the point that Drake Sinclair, who is the one of the main heroic characters in the Six Gun, was the villain in the original pitch. I mean, he was hunting down Becky. He was going to kill Becky and her little brother, and it was a very different story. And it sat for a while. We couldn't find the right artist for the book, and then Oni asked me what I thought about Brian doing it.
Will you work with him again?
Yeah, would you please work with Brian again? And I remember the conversation. I said, I'd love for Brian to do it, but there's no way he has time to do the book. But
I always jump into this point and say I wanted to do it from the very beginning, but my schedule didn't work out.
well,
You play hard to get.
No,
it is true. There's an image somewhere, and I wish we could find it. That
I
Brian
think it's in the hardback.
Brian drew an image of the Six Gun before he was ever working on the book, based on that original horror pitch. So there's another image of the Six Gun. I can't find it online or anything.
I think
might
it's in
be
the
in the
hardback.
hardback.
Unfortunately, it's a horrible drawing. I think it's in the hardback though.
But
The hardcover's coming out by the end of this year for anyone who's curious.
yeah. But then when we started working together on it, and we realized there was a much bigger story that we could tell with the Six Gun, and that's when it kind of Brian and I like to do world building. And once we start talking about a story, we can't. One of the biggest problems we have is we can't shut up about
It's
it.
a sickness. Yeah.
We keep building and building and building, and that's when the Six Gun really turned into what it became.
So let me pivot a little bit, Mr. Churilla. You were coming off of finishing the amazing Secret History of D.B. Cooper, and
Has
then
anybody here read that?
yeah, that book is
You
phenomenal.
should check it out.
Yeah,
It's insane.
if you like
What's the quick
if
pitch?
you like monsters, 70s espionage,
Psychedelia.
psychedelic drugs,
Monsters on psychedelic drugs.
head explosion,
I do like all those things.
Soviets.
Soviet.
Talking teddy bears.
The story of D.B. Cooper, he was a guy in 72 who hijacked a plane with a bunch of money. He jumped out when the plane was flying between Portland and Seattle and disappeared in a legend. And Brian's take goes a million miles past that.
Well, it's the 2 weeks leading up to the so-called hijacking, and I've been saying that it's like if you took a Cold War era, espionage thriller with all the paranoia and secret agent stuff, and then had like David Cronenberg direct a movie like
That's
based
perfect.
on, like
Yeah,
in
that's
like the
exactly
mid
right.
'80s. It's probably what it would be, very close to that. So.
Yeah, and the hardback is gorgeous, and if you get a chance, you should go by the ONI booth and pick it up.
But after D.B. Cooper, we had asked Churilla if he'd be willing to jump aboard on the Six Gun for a 5-issue miniseries called Sons of the Gun, which I hope you guys have all read. It's about the Four Horsemen.
And if not, the collection comes out in December.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Brian, what was it like jumping in? I mean, like it's a little bit strange to be coming into a creator-owned book that's sort of been pre-established. Like, what was it like?
Well, it's nice in that, and one of the nice things is that it is already established, and that, there's reference for everything. The characters already have an established look, and so that was nice. It's kind of a relief, because like sometimes you get into a project and you're like, talk about world building, but it's like you're just drawing everything from scratch and coming up with, if you're not doing it like on your own, like I did with D.B. Cooper, it's like, okay, you have a big chunk of script and all this exposition and like, describing everything, and, but it was kind of freeing to like be able to just kind of work on the story and not be so like bogged down by having to do concept art for everything. So.
Like one of the interesting things about Sons of the Gun is that like while you weren't drawing it, Mr. Hurtt, you were co-writing it too.
Yeah.
What was it like co-writing with Cullen? And Cullen, what was it like now having your artist
Ooh,
co-write?
let me answer that one.
Yeah, please let Colin answer that.
It was terrible. No, I think Brian's a very good storyteller. I think it's funny because when he was writing some of those script pages, I remember thinking how merciless Brian was to Churilla. I mean, I think sometimes Brian has always said when we work on Six Gun, don't hold back. Really try to challenge. Don't worry about challenging me as an artist. Let's just do what you can.
Whatever works for the story. Yeah.
But I'm pretty certain there were some 9 and 10 panel pages that
I felt
Brian was
horrible.
writing.
I felt horrible.
And these weren't, when you write comics, a lot of people, there's some people that say, a comic shouldn't be more than 5 or 6 panels, or you lose, it gets too tight. And we blew that out of the water in Six Gun, because I think our average is 6 panels.
Yeah, I think our average is 6 or 7,
6
which is
or
what
7.
I'm comfortable with.
That's where it starts.
Yeah,
Six
no,
But-
that's where it starts.
Brian took that and said, well, I'm sure I could draw a 10 or 12 panel page.
I didn't do any
I'm
12
gonna
panel
make
pages.
Churilla suffer.
There's a couple
so
8.
I just think Brian was a very merciless writer. He really wanted to.
But he
I think he
nailed
had
it.
something against.
He nailed it. He pulled it off.
Yeah, no, he pulled everything off just fine. But there was a lot of stuff I think we may have toned down a few of those pages a little bit.
What do you mean a grid system?
Like,
I don't-
no, it's
There's no full bleed.
yeah.
Yeah. That's not grid.
Man, that's a lot of dialogue.
That's-
Now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, that's kind of a nightmare.
That's
What
only
the hell were you doing
that's
to
only
Churilla?
4 panels a page.
wrong
Well,
with you?
there were a lot of. I mean, there's a sequence that Brian wanted to do in. Brian Hurtt wanted to do in Six Gun. It's sort of this action sequence, and he even kind of drew it out for me at a Starbucks one night. He said, "This is what I really want to be." And I remember thinking, it's a 9-panel. Each of these pages,
12.
this action sequence, was
12.
9 or 12 panels or
Or
something.
16. It was a lot.
There was a lot, and I was like, "Are you sure you can pull this off?" I'll happily do it, but
We haven't done that one. You're talking about.
no, I'm talking about there's a scene in Volume 4, I think, that
Oh, okay.
you
Never
really
mind
you
then.
wanted to plot out that
Okay.
was pretty brutal. But then he just took that he could do it because he had it in his mind and said, well, I'll just write that. And so he was writing these action sequences that were pretty
That was a
heavy.
silent issue.
There were a lot of panels.
They're all silent issues, Brian.
Just a
Silent.
spotlight on the writer.
Silent but deadly.
I think what Brian's not telling you is how much he learned from me, how he's grown not only as a creator but as a person by working with me in such a way.
I think Cullen and I have a very similar sensibility to storytelling, so it was kind of, and we've worked together so long, it was easy to sort of jump in the Six Gun universe. And every issue was different. Some I would write quite a bit of and turn over to Cullen, and he would go through and fix everything. And then there's others there's one in particular I didn't write at all. I didn't touch. And it was somewhere in between, somewhere in
Right.
between there. So.
Yeah.
And
You guys have talked about like
and we're gonna
continuing
do
to
more.
co-write and
Yeah,
do
we're gonna
more
do-
like that.
Yeah. We're not supposed to announce anything, but we're going to do another Six Gun thing.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
we have a couple of
Really.
things that are coming.
Yeah,
percolating.
that we will be co-writing together.
Yeah, and then on top of that, I think we're gonna be coy about this, but I mean like there's a thing that Cullen and Churilla are working on that hasn't been announced yet, but like is fully in production. And what's that been like? Because this one you're getting to build from the ground up, and I mean the pages that Churilla's been doing have been like just blasting it into the stratosphere.
I've seen them. They look awesome.
Yeah, they're pretty crazy.
Thank you. It's tough to not get into the
It's
story,
tough to not punch you.
but it's the kind of story where there's something new in each issue. There's some new sort of landscape or environment that I get to play with visually, and I don't know. It's.
Well, I will say, yeah, from Six Gun, it never gets boring because I never, Cullen doesn't repeat himself, with the characters or with the landscapes or, things keep moving and it never gets old. It's always fun to draw something new. And Bill, our colorist, who's not here, has the same opinion. Like he never gets bored on the book because he's constantly going somewhere else and doing something new and being surprised at what's happening in the story. And
Well, and I think especially with these creators, I kind of feel like I try, and especially with the project Churilla and I are working on. I call him by his last name so I don't get the Bryans confused.
Just call me Hondo.
Okay, that Hondo and I are working on. I try to keep them involved and talk about the types of things that they want to draw. I know that Churilla's given me some ideas for some things he wanted to.
I know what they are too. It's
Yeah.
monsters.
Yeah, so
More monsters.
There are a lot of monsters.
I was out
in
spoiler.
this
There's
new
going to be
thing.
monsters in anything Brian Churilla draws.
Yes.
Come on,
So
you're the
I-
god of drawing monsters.
I
Yeah.
try to keep them involved, and I want it to be a collaborative thing. Now, there have been times, like with Joelle, that I told Joelle, issue 4 of Helheim, for instance, was going to be a pretty much a talking issue of the book. I told her this is going to be no action. In
Which
this
he's
book.
known for, his gab fests.
Yeah, I think this-
Joelle, what is it like being stereotyped as an artist of Vikings and hyperviolence?
It happens too often.
Yeah, no. So that's a nice little segue because Cullen also Helheim just finished its 6-issue run, which is going to be the first series out of a projected trilogy, I believe.
Yes. But that issue, just so I finish that issue in particular, I told Joelle it's going to be a very easygoing, you don't have to draw too much issue. And halfway through writing it, I decided I didn't like it, so I scrapped it. In the script I sent her, she had to draw like armies of monsters and demons,
Yeah.
2 armies opposing each other.
Yeah. We have 2 extra pages.
Yeah, and
Just
it was
thrown
2
in.
extra pages. She agreed to.
Where you had to bribe her?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we had to
with-
bribe.
We had to send Joelle a big bottle of tequila as a thank you because it was a brutal issue.
So
It
what I'm
worked.
saying is, even though I try to collaborate
You never
well,
send me tequila.
sometimes I mess up.
You never send me tequila.
That's issue 4.
Fail.
Get ready.
Editor fail. But Joelle, what was it like, working with Cullen? Because up till that point you were coming off of the Jan Vanovich book. I mean, this was, when Helheim came up, it was kind of a pivot for what you would probably previously been known for, right?
Yeah, I had a good warm-up book. Warm-up's kind of insulting. I love the book. It's Girl Who Owned a City. And it was like post-apocalyptic, kids with guns and guard dogs eating people. I really enjoyed drawing it. It was a good warm-up to the chaos that I had to. But I loved working with Cullen a lot. It was so much fun, and I loved getting the scripts after each issue. I never knew while I was drawing it what was going to happen in the next issue, and I loved working that way. It was so much fun and really exciting to find out what was happening.
Well, the good news is the second series it's like all talking.
Is
thing.
it?
It's very very low key.
But one of the things I really dug about Helheim was that, Joelle, your sense of creature design was really kind of different from, at least from my perspective, just looking at the scripts coming in, different than kind of what I expected. Cullen, they were kind of surprising, weren't they, when they came in?
Why? Why were you guys surprised?
Well, you have these malevolent bear creatures that, from a certain perspective in issue 4, that could be
For a
like,
girl?
what?
He just said for a girl.
You draw
How
monsters pretty good.
dare you? How dare you? No, I mean, there's not to be all spoilery, but I mean, if you read Helheim, there's a dog that plays in that is sort of like a bit of a buried lead, like a little plot point, and that dog is kind of cute for what it does in the end. And
I love dogs, and I was so excited to draw dogs. Well, he said in the script he wrote a sheepdog, or yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I wrote a sheepdog. I said
think
a
you
hungry.
wrote
I
sheepdog. I
I
think
said
you
a
just said
hungry
dog.
dog.
A hungry
I think I
dog.
said a hungry
I'm
dog.
pretty sure it was
And you drew the
sheepdog.
sweetest dog
She drew the
ever.
Disney's Shaggy Dog.
Yeah, but here,
If you've ever seen Labyrinth, it looks like the dog that Sir Didymus rode around
Yeah.
on. It looks just like that dog.
yeah. Also, really easy to draw. He doesn't have eyes, so
Right.
it was easy to draw over and over again.
he sure has teeth, though.
Yeah, he's
Yes,
adorable. Maybe Vikings didn't have adorable.
I like
shaggy
that
dogs.
dog. I like
I
that
like the
dog a
dog.
lot. I think Joelle told me. I think she just wanted to draw anything that didn't have crab arms. I think that's. I think they could probably tell you my.
Well, tell them what you said about.
Yeah.
Tell 'em
What?
you said about
What did you say about me?
What?
The list of monsters he gave you.
Oh, the first one. It was.
It's a 13-year-old comment about how it's
Oh.
like a dream.
It was. I was reading the script for number 4, with the armies attacking each other, and I was sitting across the kitchen table from my roommate, and I was like, "What? What is this bullshit?" It's like a 13-year-old just spit out all the stuff he thought it was cool, and put it in one story. It's like,
On one page.
on one page. This guy's gonna have horns. Also, he spits venom. Also, I'm gonna put wings on this guy. But what if he was furry at the same time? It's like weird.
Were you consulting a D&D monsters manual while you were writing Helheim?
No, but I think that this is 13-year-old bullshit sums up my writing style perfectly.
That's the pull quote.
That's yeah. But Joelle also told me that you have a thing that all the monsters, so many of your monsters, you want to have crab arms or crab legs. And now that she said it, I'm pretty sure I've written some things in the thing we're doing that may have crab arms or
You
crab
have like a
legs.
seafood fetish.
I do. I find crabs very disgusting.
I've never drawn a crab.
Well, you
Yeah.
don't draw what I ask you to anyway, so I'm just kidding.
So you guys are planning on coming back to Helheim next year, I'm assuming, or maybe end of this year. Joelle, you've got like a creator-owned thing that is unannounced yet, but after that, probably we're coming back to Helheim. Is there? I've not seen very much, but can you tease anything without spoilering about Helheim 2?
Are you? Well, there's going to be some monsters in it. There's some crab leg dudes. Can I tell them what my It's called Brides of Helheim. So it'll be
Tentatively.
No, that's the time. It's Brides of Helheim, which I don't know if you guys know. If you've read, have any of you read Helheim? Okay, so Helheim is basically Franken-Viking or Vikingstein. It's a Viking era Frankenstein story. So I think the sequel should be Brides of Helheim. I think that works perfectly.
Yeah, I like it.
And the third one is Helheim versus Crabman.
So, like, you work with a pretty diverse set of creators. I mean, like, and also on top of that, you've worked with Matt Kent on The Tooth, and Matt is kind of blowing the hell up.
Do I
And
get to pick my favorite?
what?
Do I get to name my favorite?
Yeah, who is your favorite?
I can't do that.
Who's your least favorite?
I can't do that. All of them are my favorites.
We're both here.
We should make people guess.
No, everyone here is my favorite.
And you got like a ton of stuff that's not announced.
Yeah, I have several books with Oni that aren't.
Yeah,
announced.
you're doing a book with an artist named Drew Moss that's unannounced.
I know you don't want it.
Yeah.
Also involving monsters
Monsters and crab legs.
with crabs. You've got a lot.
Are you looking for a Red Lobster endorsement?
I am. I'm thinking about going and getting the domain name Monsters and Crab Legs as a website domain.
But yeah. So I'm gonna open it up for questions. Are you guys ready? Are you ready for questions? Do you want to add?
Are we supposed to ask questions or?
No. We can let them ask questions. So any of you guys have questions? If you come up with a funny one, I'll give you free comics.
A funny one.
Okay, so I actually just read the first script for Six Gun #1 on your website.
Okay.
And I noticed,
Uh-oh.
comparing them because I do that, that page 4 has like 3 or 4 more panels than it is originally scripted. Was that a revision that you made, or is that Brian contributing and sort of saying, I can throw way more?
Page
it was-
4 of issue 1?
Page 4 of issue 1.
What page was that?
I'm looking right now.
Well, first of all, if anyone is interested in looking at a script, my website
Ah.
does have all my scripts. Which one is it? Oh,
It's
that one.
the
Yeah.
Gallantry.
If
Yeah.
you want to see any of my scripts, they are the script for Six Gun at least is posted on my website.
Just
but-
just the first one, or do you have others?
I think there are others, but I know the first issue of Six Guns out there. And yeah, that was probably Brian. It's very frequent that Brian will call me and say, "Hey, I know you wrote this way. Can I add some panels, or can I move a panel?"
It's actually not that frequent. I don't call anymore.
It-
I just,
Yeah,
I just do it.
At this point, he does. There's the shorthand I was talking about. He just doesn't ask. He just
If
does
it's
it.
well, we trust each other.
Yeah.
If I know it's going to change some of the intent from Cullen, or if I have to move a panel to a different page, then I will run it by Cullen first.
And really, I think that comics are what I like about comics is the collaborative nature, and the artist really has that eye for the visual eye and can tell what they can put on the page a lot, and in many cases, in all cases, better than I can. So if they can add to it and enhance the story, I want them to, and that kind of goes for everybody I work with except Churilla, and.
Churilla's gonna kill all of us.
I wasn't listening.
Oh, he's spaced out.
No, so yeah, it was Brian. In that case, I'm pretty sure I know you called and we talked about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes he still calls. You still talk about how you can do something
I
different.
talk a lot.
But a lot of times he just does it now. So yeah, you will see. And it's funny that we did a silent issue. Issue 21 of the Six Gun was a silent issue, and we did an art show where they put Brian's art up on the wall with the script that I wrote for the silent issue.
And they got really confused.
And it got really confused because there were times where there were 3 pages, and they just had to cut like one what was basically one panel of the script in the script because Brian just went and drew 3 pages because we added a ton of pages
we
to that
added
story.
6 actually. Well,
We
yeah,
had-
it was probably 22 pages, I
It was
guess.
a 22-page script, and it ended up.
And I
being-
was like, oh, there's no dialogue. It seems so short.
Yeah.
I really want to draw more action. So I said, from between this scene and this scene, can I add some more stuff?
Yeah.
And
Brian
I
just
ran
added
it by
those
him. I
pages.
showed him thumbnails and
Yeah.
everything, and we talked it through. But yeah,
I mean, it's like your process is it's pretty fluid, as far as like you guys tweaking it on the fly from script to.
it's
But
I don't
at
know.
the
It's,
same
I think
time-
I think it's pretty tight. Cullen
Yeah.
writes a tight script,
I-
and I follow it as best I can. I make little adjustments, but it's the same as I would do with any other writer.
Yeah, I try to write pretty, tight scripts, but I even put notes on them for some people that at the beginning of my script says this script is not marching orders. You need to have that leeway to adjust a little bit. With these guys, like I said, I know them and I've talked to them, and it's a little easier. And then in some cases, they're the artists I don't talk to. I feel it makes me a little nervous. I think that sometimes.
Even Helheim changed. I mean, like Helheim went from being 5 issues to 6.
Yes.
And that happened like when you were writing
When I wrote the
Issue
fifth
5.
you were working on issue 3 at the time, 3 or 4. Yeah, before it shifted over. So these things can change. Anyone else questions?
Does he get a book for funny questions?
Yes, he does. Come here.
Well, I was born and raised in Portland, and my earliest memory of D.B. Cooper was watching Unsolved Mysteries with like the eerie like synthesizer music, and then they'd show the like really creepy mugshot, or not mugshot, but like police sketch, which all police sketches are like horrifying to me because they're just bizarre and terrifying looking. And I don't know. I was aware of the story at a very young age, and being from Portland, knowing that it happened here, and I guess, and I kind of first conceived of it like, I don't know, maybe
On LSD.
yeah, on LSD, but like 6-7 years ago, and was like, well, it's a great, at the time I was just kind of fledgling, just trying to get some sort of career together, and I was just kind of working on something, and well, you should do something about D.B. Cooper. He's such an iconic Northwest-centric character, and it just kind of over the years it would go on the back burner. I'd start working on it again, and what I had originally conceived of was like very different from what I ended up doing. But it was just something that always just kind of captured my imagination, and it was, it's something that a lot of people know about, especially people that live here in the Northwest. So it was sort of like you already, it made sense. I already have name recognition. It's like an established character, and he's also like a folk hero in the Northwest. And so I was unemployed for a while. I worked for Marvel for a little bit, and then just was unemployed for a while, and then randomly got a call from ONI or an email wanting to meet up. And
Hilariously, like I think it was Chuck Beebe who said we should talk to you, and James and I both had no idea you were in Portland for inexplicable reasons.
And it was just meeting up with them. I had like 5 small little paragraphs, 5 different story concepts, and that was the one at the top because it was the one I had always wanted to work on. Because I don't know, it just seemed, it was just kind of, it was. There's been a lot of stories that I've come up with, that I've written or that I've pitched and stuff, and nothing has ever captured my imagination or made me excited like that did. And I don't really know what it was. I don't know. Maybe it's just growing up and being aware of it for so long, then being able to contribute somehow to the mythos or create my own mythos around it. It was just, and finally getting the opportunity to do it. It was awesome. And it's like I tell people now, I go, well, I guess I'm retired from writing. That's it. I kind of, I did my thing, and be like, no, you got to do something else. And I'm like, there's nothing in my mind that's cooler than like D.B. Cooper.
Not so Secret History of D.B. Cooper.
Well, it's not so secret now. We made a book about it, Charlie. So I guess it. Mm-hmm. Well, it's like in a lot of the copy for the press releases leading up to the release of the book, it was like there was a lot of a lot of stuff was coming out in the media about, you know, some gal saying it was her uncle and this and that, and like, so I wrote the copy for the press releases saying it's like, you know, like, do not believe what, you know, they're saying about this. They're just trying to discredit this book that's coming out, and so it's, you know, all that stuff, like, in my mind, anything that you hear about D.B. Cooper that isn't my book is garbage, and like it's all a lie, you know, to discredit my book.
Screw you, Don Draper.
Yeah, so, but it's like, if I was gonna do some more D.B. Cooper, it wouldn't even be about that. It would probably all take place in like the parallel dimension that half of that book takes place in. So
Come up for your book. Yeah.
prizes.
It sucked. I'm just kidding.
You know, it was as far as what happened. I mean, I don't know everything that goes into why NBC. You know, NBC made the decision. They made a pilot, so there is a pilot episode, and NBC decided not to take it to series. And there were a lot of reasons for that.
Product placement.
Product placement was difficult, I'm sure. But there's still life out there. I mean, there's still people interested in it. It's still, you know, there's still activity around the Six Gun as a TV show. But leading up to it was pretty exciting because I've never done anything like that, and Carlton Cuse kept us much more involved than I think he had any. He didn't need to keep us involved as he did. I mean, we were involved in. We saw all the auditions for all the people who were trying to play characters we created, and some of the, you know, a lot of these were people we knew. I mean, there were many times I said, oh, "This person was on this show," and you know, we'd talk about that, how exciting that was. And they actually asked for our feedback, so we were giving feedback on who we thought would make a good Drake or who we thought would make a good Becky. And ad nauseum, Missy Hume, we went back and forth on her for so long because it was difficult for them to find someone they wanted to play that character. And they kept us. I mean, they kept us involved through the scripting phase. They kept us involved.
The shooting, we saw
all
the
the
dailies.
You know, we saw dailies every day.
It
we'd
actually
see
became
something.
kind of mind-numbing after a point. Like, oh, I gotta watch these again. I
Yeah.
got work to do.
But it was pretty exciting. They took our notes. I mean, if we gave them, there were suggestions we gave that they incorporated into the
pilot,
into the pilot. And it was super exciting because Brian and I went out to the shoot in an old West town, a dusty old West town. I remember we walked onto the set, and there was a saloon, Missy Hume's saloon. The Silver Palace is sitting there. And we walked the Emerald
Saloon
Palace.
or the Emerald Palace or something on the show.
On the show it was going to be the Emerald Palace. And we walked in, and all these extras were just sitting around dressed as cowboys and saloon girls, and they were all just sitting
In a
around
smoke-filled room.
and it was smoky, and they all just kind of turned and and looked. And it felt like we were really walking into an Old West saloon, and it was really cool. Everybody involved in the show really loved the book. It wasn't just something that they were doing as a
The
job.
actors were coming up having us sign the books for them, which is
I remember jokingly asking Brian, I said, do you think when we get there, do you think that everybody's going to stop and clap for us when we walk?
and when they did it, he's like, they must be waiting till we leave.
They must be waiting till we leave and they clap us off. But I felt really weird because the guy, as I went to get my coat from the car and I saw Drake walking out from the food tents or whatever. He was walking across this dusty plain. I was like, "There's Drake," and I felt weird asking him to have a picture made with me. I was like, "Can I have my picture with you?" But then all the other actors were asking us for. They would come up and ask us for pictures together, and that was kind of and they were talking about the book and were really excited about the book, which was very fulfilling, I guess. What'd you think of it, Brian?
Yeah, same thing.
So
Oh,
it was
you
great.
said it all. Yeah.
It was great. You know, I'm interested in seeing where it goes next. But really, the focus for us is trying to get that. It's so easy to get, the flip side of that about it being so awesome was that we were getting so caught up in it. And it was very easy to think about that instead of thinking about the book first. And
I think we had a pretty good viewpoint on the whole thing, and we kept telling each other that in the end, it's all about the book. No matter what the TV show had, if it's good, if it's bad, whatever, we've always got the book, and that's the one thing we can control. So that's what we tried to stay focused on. Kept telling each other.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll show up. If the series is completely dead, nobody picks it up, I'm sure it'll show up in a year or so. People will find it, but if it gets picked up, then it probably still might leak. But right now, because it's still being shopped around and stuff, they don't want to put that out there.
The TV show, as it was made for the pilot, like basically all those actors had like a put commitment. Those are all gone. So like if a thing happens with the Six Gun TV show, it's all going to be recast.
They recast it, reshoot
it would be
it,
all completely different than what the pilot is. So on a certain level, if that pilot ever does resurface, it's not going to have any bearing on whatever the TV show may or may not become.
If Cullen makes me draw another horse ever again, it's going on Pirate Bay like that second.
It's possible. I can't control myself when it comes to crab legs. Yeah, maybe there could be some sort of a gun that gives people crab legs when you.
Yeah,
it's the seventh gun. It's the lobster gun.
Right. So maybe. That's awesome.
Bill's gonna be so happy coloring little tiny lobsters.
It'd be a lobster blunderbuss. This big.
He's got a question over here.
It is.
Yeah, I was just wondering if any of your proposals for the dam, six-gun, Helheim, if any of those exist for public consumption.
I think I put the proposal for the 6-gun. I think I even put the original.
I think you put the proposal for Penny Dreadful.
Yeah. So earlier we mentioned the first thing Brian and I pitched to ONI was a book called Penny Dreadful, which was a Victorian era horror story about the guys who lived across the street from Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think
it's
that
much cooler than it sounds.
Yeah, that proposal's out on my website. I thought the proposal for 6-gun may be on my website, but I don't know. I'll try. I should put some of that stuff out there a little more publicly. So I'll keep an eye on my website, and I'll start posting some more of that stuff soon. Because I don't mind showing as long as the book's out, I don't mind showing the proposal for it.
The question was, what stuff are you guys reading, and what are you into?
This is your panel, Cullen. You go first.
I like the things that Brian Churilla, Joelle Jones, and Brian.
Nice.
It's such a weird question because I don't think I read comics. I mean, I read a lot of comics, but I feel like I'm reading a lot of stuff that's a few years old, or I keep going back to it, and that's the stuff that's kind of.
Asterix.
Yeah, I'm not reading Asterix, right? But I've
Secret Wars 2.
I like Mind Management by Matt Kent, which is I think a really good book. I like I keep going back.
We always talk about it's always the hardest question. You know it's coming, and you can never think of it.
Yeah, I can never think of. I mean, I can't even think of what the last comic. I was reading comics before I left for Portland. I can't even think of what comics I was reading.
Saga, I think is pretty great.
Saga's great. I was reading East of West. That was the last thing I was reading right before I got on the plane. I was reading East of West, and I just picked up Five Ghosts, but I haven't started reading because I think it looks cool, but I haven't read it yet.
Nowhere Men, I've enjoyed.
I read.
I'm behind on everything too.
Yeah,
so
I'm pretty far behind.
I read a bunch last week. Matt Kent and I had a comic book night, pajama party.
Thanks for inviting me.
And we got together because we both have giant 2-read piles, and we got together and we just sat down. He and myself and Matt and his daughter sat around reading comic books all night.
Painting each
and
other's
I read,
toenails.
Painting each other's toenails. I read Old City Blues. I think it's published by Archaea. Yeah, I can't. It's a Greek name. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I like that a lot. I read a bunch of things and they're all good. Oh, I read Fatale by.
That's good.
Was my favorite. I always love Brubaker and Phillips, and that's my favorite thing they've done so far. I really enjoyed that. I read the first 2 volumes. I haven't read the 3rd volume yet, but that was fantastic. I don't know. What else have I read?
I just reread Preacher. Does that count? I mean, it's several years old,
I
but
always
I
read
did
Hellboy,
just reread them.
BPRD.
And I just read all the BPR, all the trades for the Hell on Earth, the BPRD trades. I just read all of those.
Yeah, yeah. Joel, I'll just point out you're just repeating everything I say. Yeah, that too.
I don't. Well, I did. Well, you're just reminding me. Someone else tell me a book, and I'll tell you if I read it.
What are you reading? I'm
They're
always
so
taking
catty with each other all the time. This is what it looks like on email too.
It does.
What about you, Joelle? What are you reading?
I don't know. It's the same thing.
Oh,
I
it's the
for-
same thing.
No, it's the same. I put on the spot. I can't remember anything. I did just finished. I know it's so old, but I just finished Lock and Key.
Oh,
What are you looking
I like
at?
that too.
I was looking at the microphone that you have. No, I was just going to say Lock and Key. Oh, Lock and Key too. I like that. I read Red-Handed by Matt Kent when I was
Same.
hanging out with Matt Kent,
That's weird.
which was a great. I haven't read Mind Management though.
Oh, see,
Um,
so we read different things.
Yeah.
Terrible friend. You haven't
I-
read
he knows,
management?
He knows that. I've seen the whole thing drawn, but I haven't read it. No, but Red-Handed from First Second is a standalone graphic novel by Matt Kent, which is fantastic. If you like Matt Kent stuff, which is pretty great.
Actually, since we're talking about Matt Kent, what was it like working on the tooth with him? Cullen.
Matt was a great. I'm a big fan of his work. So, The Tooth was a book about a giant tooth that I pitched to ONI years ago, and it sat.
It is not about dentistry.
Shockingly, I had difficulty finding someone who was willing to draw this book about a giant tooth. It's about a.
You
basically
pitched it to me to draw at one point.
I
like
actually emailed
years ago.
Churilla cold, having never met him or anything, and said, "Hey, I've got a book about this guy that has this giant tooth that nests in his mouth and sometimes jumps out and fights monsters." I pitched it to Brian, and he turned it down right away. Actually, Brian was in the car when I came up with the tooth, and we were driving back from a convention, and I said, Brian, I got it. I finally cracked the code.
There's a lobster.
I said, there's this guy, and he finds a tooth on his front porch, a giant fang, and it gets in his mouth like a reverse saber-toothed tiger's fang, and occasionally it jumps out of his mouth and grows to the size of a gorilla and fights dragons and demons and vampires. And there was a moment of silence in the car, and then Brian just calmly said, "That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Don't ever ask me to draw it." And so I never asked him to draw it. But it sat for a while. We had difficulty finding an artist for it. And finally I said, I wonder if Matt Kent would even be interested in it. And he jumped on it immediately. And he was great to work with. Matt's used to doing his own thing, though. He's used to being the writer and the artist. And there were moments where you could see he was just getting into it because there were characters who did not appear in certain scenes that were not meant to appear in certain scenes, that were suddenly in scenes in the book that we had to rewrite dialogue. And
There was like a vampire ladies turning into dogs or vice versa.
there was a moment where there were dogs or something that he didn't want to draw, so he said, "I'm just going to turn them into vampires." So I had to rewrite it as vampires because he didn't want to draw dogs.
Classic diva move.
Yeah, he's like, I don't really want to draw dogs, so I'll just draw vampires. I was like, "Are you serious?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm just going to draw vampires." So we had to rewrite the scene. But actually, him wanting to turn those into vampires gave me what I feel is one of my favorite beats in the book, because I just did. It's about a guy with a tooth. So the tooth is essentially it's a tribute to the 70s and 80s horror books like Werewolf by Night and Man Thing and Swamp Thing, and it's definitely got that old school vibe of just different horror aspects, and sort of it's got a little bit of camp. And the book, if you look at it, looks like a stack of comics you found at a flea market. And it even goes through, there are different covers, and there are ads, and there's letters pages, and things like that thrown throughout the trade, or the hardback. But yeah, him wanting to draw vampires, and he said vampires, all right, so we wrote vampires, and then he drew what I consider vampirellas, because they're all women vampires in these skimpy outfits. But him saying he wanted to do vampires instead of dogs, because he didn't want to draw dogs, gave me what I feel is one of my favorite beats in the book. There's a moment in the book that I really love in the book as a whole. It wouldn't be there if there weren't vampires in the book.
So the lesson here is don't listen to Cullen scripts.
Is that what you guys want to say?
It's our job to improve them. So.
I will say one of my favorite things about the Tooth is that like, and if you guys haven't read it, it's amazing. It's our villain is like an evil wizard, Colonel Sanders.
Yes.
Like he's just full Southern drawl and hilarious, and you know.
He even has the little black tie thing, whatever that is.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have it here because I think we have like 2 copies left at the booth. So you guys should run to the ONI booth after this and go grab it.
I
while we
think that's
still
how I
have it.
described it in the script. He has that little black tie thing. But I don't know what things are called. That was Matt Kent did. Matt Kent and Keith Wood did the design of it, and Matt did.
It's 254. I'm kidding.
I'm sorry. Oh, all right. So Matt Kent was very responsible for a lot of those designs, and Keith at ONI also did a lot too.
So we got to wrap it up, I think. Any last questions? Anyone? All right. Well, the 6th gun is still ongoing. We're about 34 issues in out of what's going to be a projected 50.
Not projected. It's 50.
It's 50. And it's going to end really well because it's been plotted since very, very early on. And then beyond that, Joelle and Cullen are going to be doing a second arc of Helheim. Joelle's going to be doing a create-your-own series before that like you're going to leapfrog back and forth with, right?
Yeah.
And then Brian and Cullen's next collaboration is coming soon. Hopefully we'll be announcing that sometime next year. So anything else you guys want to promote? I don't know.
Well, we're gonna announce it soon.
Maybe.
Matt.
You're still
Yeah.
working on issue 1, aren't
We're gonna
you?
guerrilla announce it.
All right.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, everybody.
Yay.